and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's beer cake pop tutorial, where I'll be showing you how to make this gorgeous little beer stein or beer glass cake pops. Tools and equipment that we will be using today: I have a polystyrene block, that's just what I'm resting my cake pops in today, a Ziploc bag, I've got a pair of scissors, a couple of Lollypop sticks, I've got my pre-rolled cake pop ball ready to go. So if you don't have a great recipe for getting your cake pops to this stage rolled and ready to decorate, I will leave a link to our tutorial in the description box below. I've got some melted chocolate. Now I've used 80% yellow, either yellow candy melts or white chocolate tinted yellow, and then just about 10-15% of dark chocolate or milk chocolate, just to give it, so it's mostly yellow, and then I just put in a little bit of dark chocolate, and then I just change the color a tiny bit with just a little bit of white chocolate at the end. So you really want this kind of a color. It's almost like a yellowish browny color, but it's a good beer shade. I've got a little bit of melted white chocolate, I've got a spoon, I've got some of these little white non-pariels. So they're just little tiny sprinkles, I guess, that are just plain white. And I've got some Lifesavers. You do want the Lifesavers that are going to have the holes in the middle, and I've just gone with white ones today. My sprinkles I've popped onto a nice tray just because they are particularly messy. So when we do go to sprinkle these, it's going to make a lot of mess, so you want a nice wide tray so that you don't destroy your workspace. Let's get started. First thing we want to do is make a nice little beer glass or beer stein shape. So just taking that cake pop ball, you just want to roll it in between your hands, and then you want to take either end and just smack it on the bench. So 1 and 2. Give it a couple of good smacks on either end and it will flatten down, and then just using your hand, just roll it back out again. So that gives you your nice flat top and bottom. Give it a little pat, and you should have something that looks like this. So pop that one into the refrigerator for about 10 minutes until it's really nice and firm, and then you'll be ready to dip it and decorate. I've got a pre-refrigerated one here just to save us on time today. So you want to take your Lollypop stick and just dip it into that beer coloured chocolate. Give it a nice little centimetre or 2 on the end, and turning your cup upside down, look at it as you do it, because you do want to make sure that your Lollypop stick goes in straight. I found that they sort of had a tendency to want to go in crooked, which you don't notice on a ball. And stick it on. Now with that bottom, you don't really want that chocolate seal distorting the shape of your beer cup or your beer glass, so just take your finger and just run it around the base of that cake pop. So you still will have a nice seal, but it's just not as thick and chunky, and it's not going to change the shape of our beer glass. We'll just let that chocolate seal completely set, and then we'll come back to dip. Alright, so a couple of minutes, my chocolate seal is completely set, and we're ready to dip our beer cake pop. So taking your white chocolate or your coloured beerish chocolate, just dip it in and make sure that you meet it up with that chocolate seal. Pull it out, and you want to give it a few really good taps just to get that excess chocolate off. Alright, so we've tapped off the excess, and you can see that shape's really starting to come through. Now I've just taken one of those Lifesavers and I've cut it in half. So what you want to do while that chocolate is still nice and wet is just line up your cake pop and pop in your beer handle. You should have something that looks like this. It's starting to take shape, but it's not quite there yet. We'll pop it over here, and we're going to let that one dry. Now while that one's drying, we can start preparing our white chocolate. So with the white chocolate, you just want to take your Ziploc bag, taking your spoon, and I always like to give my chocolate a little bit of a stir if it's been sitting there for a couple of minutes, just because it will have started to set. So just spoon some of that chocolate into your Ziploc bag, and you don't need much. For this, you're only going to use a really little bit of white chocolate per cake pop. Squeeze that white chocolate right down to the end, and we're just going to snip off a little corner. Now I am just going to wait for this cake pop here to completely dry, so we'll come back in a few moments once that one's dried, and we'll finish off our decorations. Lovely. So we've given that a little bit of time to dry. It's been drying for 4 or 5 minutes. Now here's where it really starts to take shape as beer. Taking your little snap lock bag that we've fashioned into a little bit of a piping tip there, you just want to give it sort of a bit of a beer top. So this is the frothy, foamy head of the beer, and then I just give sort of like 4 little squirts around the outsides and that's just to give us the foam that's going to be, we'll give it 5, the foam that's going to be coming over the outside of the beer. So from here you want to just tap your wrist, so give it a couple of good taps, and you'll see there that beautiful beer foam just goes splaying over the edges of your beer glass, and we start to get looking like an actual beer. Now you want to get your tray, and as I mentioned, I've got all of my little white sprinkles. These are going to make it look like bubbles. So taking your tray, you just want to sprinkle, and you want to work quite quickly here because you want to sprinkle on while they're still wet, while that white chocolate's still wet, and sprinkle your sprinkles on. If you love this tutorial, make sure that you head on over to our channel My Cupcake Addiction and hit the subscribe button. We upload several times a week and we would love to have you stop by. Now as a last little bit, you'll see that you've got your beer glass going nicely. I just want to give it a nice flat top, just to give it more of that beer cup shape. So just get all of your sprinkles into the one area and push it down. That's going to flatten out that top a little bit and give you that lovely coating of sprinkles. So there you have your gorgeous little beer cake pops, perfect for Father's Day, Super Bowl, barbecues or picnics, and anything else you can think of. We hope that you've enjoyed watching this tutorial, and as always, thank you very much for tuning in.